Chapter 1. The Night Shift. Jason hated the night shift. Working as a security guard at an old, abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town wasn't exactly the career he had envisioned. But bills had to be paid, and work was work. The hospital, St. Mary's, had been closed for years. Rumors circulated about why it shut down. Some said it was due to financial problems. Others claimed it was because of a series of mysterious deaths. Regardless of the reason, the building now stood empty, a decaying monument to the past. Jason's shift started at midnight. The cold winter air bit at his face as he unlocked the front gate and made his way to the security office. He flicked on the lights, revealing a small room with a desk, a chair, and a bank of monitors showing various parts of the hospital. Everything seemed normal, as usual. As he settled in for the long night ahead, Jason decided to pass the time by browsing Reddit. He was a fan of the No Sleep subreddit, where users posted fictional horror stories. The stories were usually eerie, but knowing they were made up allowed him to enjoy them without fear. Chapter 2. The First Story. Jason scrolled through the posts, looking for something interesting. He found a thread titled "Chilling Stories from Reddit" and clicked on it. The first story was about a man who received texts from his dead wife. As Jason read, he felt a chill run down his spine. He shook it off, reminding himself it was just a story. Just as he was about to finish the post, the power in the hospital flickered. The monitors went black, and the room was plunged into darkness. Jason's heart raced as he fumbled for his flashlight. The power outages weren't uncommon, but they always unnerved him. The emergency lights kicked in, casting a dim glow over the hallway outside the office. Jason decided to do a quick check of the building to ensure everything was secure. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped into the corridor, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. Chapter 3. The Second Story. As Jason made his rounds, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He blamed it on the story he had just read. The silence of the hospital was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building settling. He returned to the office and was relieved to see the power had returned. The monitors flickered back to life, showing the empty hallways. Jason sat down and resumed reading the Reddit thread. The second story was about a haunted hospital, much like the one he was in. The protagonist in the story heard whispers and saw shadows moving in the corners of his vision. Jason chuckled nervously. "Too close to home," he muttered. Suddenly, a movement on one of the monitors caught his eye. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. In the corridor outside the old surgical wing, a shadow moved. His heart skipped a beat. He switched to the camera's night vision mode, but the corridor was empty. Jason tried to convince himself it was just a trick of the light. Yet, the uneasy feeling persisted. Chapter 4. The Third Story. Determined to distract himself, Jason continued to the third story. This one was about a man who found an old diary in his attic. The diary detailed the gruesome experiments conducted in a hospital. The more the man read, the more he realized the hospital was in his town, and the experiments were still happening. Jason's anxiety grew with each paragraph. He was on edge, jumping at every little noise. He glanced at the monitors frequently, half expecting to see something sinister. As he finished the story, he heard a faint whisper behind him. He spun around, flashlight in hand, but there was nothing there. The office was empty. "Get a grip, Jason," he told himself. But the whispering continued, growing louder. It seemed to be coming from the corridor. Chapter 5. The encounter Jason decided to investigate. He stepped into the hallway, the whispers echoing around him. The sound seemed to be coming from the old surgical wing. He walked cautiously, the beam of his flashlight illuminating the peeling paint and broken tiles. As he approached the surgical wing, the whispers grew louder. Jason's hands trembled, but he pressed on. He reached the door to the operating room and hesitated. Summoning his courage, he pushed it open. The room was empty, but the whispers persisted, now a cacophony of disembodied voices. Jason swept the room with his flashlight, but saw nothing unusual. He was about to leave when the temperature dropped suddenly. His breath fogged in the air. A figure appeared at the far end of the room. It was a woman dressed in a hospital gown, her eyes hollow and her skin deathly pale. Jason's blood ran cold as she started to move towards him, her feet not touching the ground. Chapter 6. The Truth. Frozen in terror, Jason could only watch as the apparition approached. She stopped a few feet away and spoke in a voice that was a mixture of many. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They are coming." Jason stumbled back, the flashlight slipping from his grasp and rolling away. The room plunged into darkness, and he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He screamed and ran, not daring to look back. The whispers followed him, echoing through the hallways. He burst into the security office and slammed the door shut. The monitors showed the corridor swarming with shadowy figures. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped. He frantically dialed his supervisor, but the call wouldn't go through. The whispers were in the office now, surrounding him. In a last-ditch effort, Jason posted his experience on Reddit, hoping someone could help him. As he hit post, the room grew colder, and the shadows closed in. Epilogue. The next morning, the day shift security guard arrived to find the office empty. Jason was gone, leaving behind his flashlight and a phone with a Reddit thread open on the screen. The final post was titled, "Chilling Stories from Reddit," and it detailed a security guard's last shift in an old, haunted hospital. To this day, users on the subreddit debate whether the story was real or a clever piece of fiction. Some claim to have seen shadows moving in the corridors of St. Mary's, while others believe Jason's tale was just another chilling story from Reddit. But those who know the hospital's history aren't so sure. They say the whispers still echo through the empty halls, and the shadows are always watching, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to wander in. Chapter 1. The Discovery. Sarah was a true Reddit enthusiast. She spent hours scrolling through various subreddits, from cooking to conspiracy theories. One evening, she stumbled upon a new subreddit called The Cursed Files. Intrigued by its name and the eerie atmosphere that the page emanated, she decided to dive in. The subreddit had a strict rule. All posts had to be tagged with real, legend, or unknown. The top post that night was tagged unknown. It was titled, "The Redditor's Curse." Sarah, feeling a mix of curiosity and trepidation, clicked on the link. The post was simple yet chilling. It detailed the experiences of users who had interacted with the curse. According to the legend, if you read the entire post aloud, you would be visited by a sinister entity that night. Sarah smirked, thinking it was just another creepypasta. Ignoring the warnings, she began to read the post aloud, her voice breaking the silence of her small apartment. Chapter 2. The Awakening. As soon as Sarah finished reading, a cold draft blew through the room, causing her to shiver. She dismissed it as her overactive imagination and continued browsing Reddit. Eventually, she decided to call it a night and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., Sarah was jolted awake by a loud banging noise. Her heart pounded as she tried to discern the source. The banging continued, echoing through her apartment. It sounded like it was coming from her living room. Gathering her courage, Sarah grabbed her phone and crept out of her bedroom. She turned on the hallway light and cautiously made her way to the living room. The banging had stopped, but the room felt colder than usual. Her eyes were drawn to her laptop, still open on the coffee table. The screen displayed the subreddit, but something was different. A new post had appeared at the top titled, "Sarah's Curse." Her breath caught in her throat as she realized the post was addressed to her. Chapter 3. The Descent. Sarah's hands trembled as she clicked on the post. It contained a detailed account of her life, her family, and even her thoughts from that very day. The final line read, "The entity is coming for you. Do not leave your apartment." Panic set in. She backed away from the laptop, her mind racing. Was someone playing a sick joke on her? She decided to call her best friend, Emily. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. "Emily, I need you to come over. Something really weird is happening," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Sarah, it's 3 a.m. What's going on?" Emily replied, sounding half asleep. "Please, just come. I'll explain when you get here." Emily agreed reluctantly. Sarah hung up and started pacing the room, her anxiety growing with each passing minute. She glanced at the laptop again. Another new post had appeared. "Do not involve others." Fear gripped her. She didn't want Emily to get hurt. She quickly sent a text, telling Emily to stay home and that she'd explain everything in the morning. As she hit send, her phone screen flickered and then it died, despite being fully charged moments ago. Chapter 4. The Encounter. Sarah felt a presence in the room. The air grew colder and she could see her breath. She turned around slowly, her heart pounding. Standing in the corner of the room was a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. The entity from the legend had come for her. It moved closer, its eyes fixed on her. Sarah tried to scream, but no sound came out. She backed away until she was pressed against the wall. The figure extended a skeletal hand towards her, and she felt an icy grip around her throat. Her vision blurred as the entity tightened its hold. Just when she thought she was going to pass out, it spoke in a voice that was a mix of whispers and growls. "You have summoned me," it said, "and now you must pay the price." Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The next morning, Emily decided to check on Sarah, worried about her friend's strange behavior. She arrived at Sarah's apartment and found the door unlocked. She called out, but there was no response. Emily entered and immediately noticed the cold. She found Sarah lying unconscious on the living room floor. Panicked, she called an ambulance. Sarah was taken to the hospital where doctors were baffled by her condition. She remained in a coma, her body unresponsive but stable. Emily, desperate for answers, returned to Sarah's apartment. She noticed the laptop on the coffee table and the open Reddit page. The last post sent shivers down her spine. The entity has claimed its victim. Despite her fear, Emily started researching the subreddit and found numerous posts from people who had similar experiences. She realized that Sarah wasn't the first victim of the Redditor's curse, and she wouldn't be the last. Emily decided to warn others. She created a new post on the Cursed Files subreddit, detailing Sarah's experience and urging people not to read the curse aloud. She hoped her warning would be heeded, but deep down, she feared that the lure of the unknown would continue to draw in new victims. As she hit post, the lights in the apartment flickered. A cold draft blew through the room and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced at the screen one last time before shutting the laptop. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The entity was always looking for its next victim, and now it knew her name.